Okay, we're ready to get started again. We are going to go into Dave Bassinger from the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, speaking on how you can get your honey labeled as organic in Utah. So David,
can you hear me?
There you are.
Okay, I can't get my headset to work, so if there's echoing, I guess let me know and I'll try to figure something out.
Well, we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay.
There you are.
Yep. So, and I may turn that off if things get a little slow. I'm actually at the county office here in Price, and sometimes the bandwidth isn't the greatest to have video on at the same time. So, let's see. You're probably not seeing that, are you?
Not yet.
Okay. Let me change screens here. Can you see that now?
No changes yet.
No changes. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Now let's try this. Okay. Have you got that?
Pink flowers.
Pink flowers. All right. So you're seeing the same thing I am.
I guess. Yes.
Okay. All right. Like he said, I'm Dave Bassinger with Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. I've been the organic manager for about 5 years. And before that, believe it or not, I was actually the state bee inspector for a few years until the state got smart and hired Joey Caputo to take my place. So that was one of the best moves the state ever did. So anyways, so I am familiar with bees. I have had my own bees in the past. I currently do not. But anyways, we'll go ahead and get started on organic beekeeping and how to get your honey organic.
Hey, Dave, you're always welcome back. You know that.
I don't know that I believe that. That's just Joey being nice. So anyways, so to get started, the history of the organic in the US. So basically it started in the 1940s with J.I. Rodell of the Rodell Institute that kind of started this movement of non-chemical farming. And that went for quite a while until the 1970s when increased environmental awareness was kind of where organic started. So addition to chemical non-synthetics were not allowed. And this was a movement that started, and there started to prop up some companies out there that started to certify farms and processing facilities as organic, but there was a lot of differences. So there was no consistency in the labeling from one term to the other. So what happened was in 1990, Congress produced the Organic Food Production Act, and that got the ball rolling, but it only took another 12 years in order to get the final rule and implement it in the fall of 2002, which the Utah Department of Agriculture was one of the first entities certified to certify organic products. And at 2002, there were no beekeeping laws. So there was a proposed apiary rule in September of 2001 that was proposed by the Organic Standards Board, but it has never been adopted to this point. So there's actually some chapters out there that we'll discuss them as we go a little bit, where the Beekeeping Act actually would fit into this rule. So the majority of the world's organic honey is produced under the EU organic regulations. So similar to the US, so there are operations throughout the world that are certified to US standards, that actually a certified agency goes over to their countries and certifies their particular operation to the USDA organic standards. And so that's what's happened with the EU, a lot in South America, especially Argentina, Brazil. And through a cooperative agreement, USDA has an agreement with the EU and with Canada that basically the organic products are equal. So we can call those products that come in from the EU, we can label those to USDA standards, just like USDA going to Europe can be labeled as European organic. So can bees be certified where there's no rule in USDA? So in April 4th of 2008, during a question and answer, USDA said yes, you can certify bees. So up until 2008, there really was no certified organic bee operations in the US. And they said, well, you have to treat bees as livestock. So you're going to have to feed them organic feed. You're not going to be able to use antibiotics, no prohibited substances, just like you would if you were raising chicken, cows, pigs, anything else. So the standards for beekeeping are the livestock standards like I talked about earlier. And if you want to look them up in Title 7 CFR 205, it's 236, 239 are the organic standards. And where we get the ability to use it is right here in the definitions. So I've underlined it there so I don't have to read the whole thing. The definition of livestock, it means non-plant life. So, or other non-plant life. This would include insects, and this is where also bees fit in. So this is what allows us as certifiers to use these rules here in order to certify bees, because you can't have organic honey without a certified organic hive producing that honey. So the hardest thing, or the most challenging, and this will be the biggest section, is land requirement. So land, in order for bees to eat a completely organic, or to produce organic or use an organic product, they have to be on certified organic property. So private land that the bees are foraging on must be certified or as organic. And I'll get onto this a little bit. There are some ways around this just a little bit, and we'll discuss it here in just a minute. So, and this is the for crops, it would be section 205, 201 through 206 on how to certify land. Now, the biggest obstacle when people call me for farms to be certified, and the number one question I have to ask them is, have you applied a prohibited substance to your property in the last 3 years? So have I used a synthetic fertilizer? Have I used ammonium nitrate, ammonium sulfate? Have I used urea? Have I sprayed it with some type of herbicide? Have I used Roundup or 2,4-D or anything else? You cannot certify that ground for 3 years from your last application. So that's the biggest hurdle, but I'm going to show you some ways that you can kind of get around this just a little bit. So the other thing that it discusses, you have to have defined boundaries and buffer zones to prevent unintended application of prohibited substances. So on those properties, you have to have borders in order to keep things from drifting onto those. So that's sometimes can be an issue, but the 3 years is the main obstacle. So this is where we can kind of get around things a little bit. So when they introduced the law in 2007 is wild harvest, and this is most likely going to be your best way to certify your hives. And what wild harvest is, a crop that is intended to be sold, labeled, or represented as organic must be harvested from a designated area that has no prohibited substances. So we actually have a company right now that goes out and to the Forest Service, they have permits, and onto the BLM, and they harvest plants to produce as organic herbs. So they use federal lands in order to do this. Now, this can also be applied to state lands that are not necessarily maintained or worked. So cabin properties, maybe grazing properties that people have, that kind of thing. So, but again, no prohibited substances for 3 years, but in most cases, these areas don't ever have anything applied to them. So, and the other requirement for wild crop harvest is that you have to gather and do it in an environmentally and sustainable way, which I believe beekeeping would actually help this rather than hinder this. So this shouldn't be a problem at all. So these are the two main requirements for wild harvest. So in 2010, some new things came out. So the NOSB made the National Organic Standards Board in 2010. They how it works is NOSB basically they go through. It's a committee. They propose laws to USDA. USDA either rejects them or accepts them. That's how things are changed with the rule. So in 2010, they had an apiculture recommendations, and they made recommendations real similar to what the EU and Canada is doing right now. And what it is they adopt, and all certifiers in the US right now have pretty well adopted these practices that will certify honey. There are actually still some certifiers out there that will not certify honey, private certifiers that just don't want to go there. With me being a state run certification agency, I pretty well have to do what the law tells me, and the law says I can certify, so I will certify. And during this NOP standards board, they defined what a forage zone is. So it's land or bodies of water within 1.8 miles radius of the edge of the apiary. So we'll talk a little more about forage zones as it goes on, but within this forage zone is where the bees are going to get all their water, their nectar, their honeydew pollen, and their propolis. And the reason why I put up there at the top, the recommendations are used in training by USDA. So USDA has a little law in their law that says 205-401D, which basically is their get out of jail free card. And it says that basically anything you need to be able to verify that there's no contamination, you can do that. And so when the USDA Standards Board came out and USDA used this in a training, that means once it's in a training, they like to use this 401 to say, well, if we put it in a training, you have to do it. And so far it has actually stood up. So forage zones, like I said, 1.8 miles in all directions. So this picture here is taken in Emery County. This could be a possible forage zone. So if you look out towards the rainbow, this is all BLM property, and there's easily 1.8 miles in this area where there's water, there's nectar, there's propolis, and of course it comes on at different stages. So in that forage zone, we need to make sure we have good quality, dense, good quality forage, that we have different bloom times, we have water, and we have all those things. So if you say, well, I'm gonna put my bees out on the salt flats, you won't get them certified because there's no appropriate forage out there, at least not to sustain. So here's a map of between Wellington and Price that I came up with. And you see there's a Price River that runs along there, kind of in this area here, kind of on the border boundary. There's a lot of agriculture in this area, but then there's also homeowners in this area. So if I was to try and set my apiary there, I would have to go to all these homeowners and ask when they last applied chemicals. And so this type of situation really doesn't work for organic honey production. So what I've got to look at is similar to what that picture that I first showed you. So this is in the mountains east of Price, and I looked, and majority of this land is public land with a little bit of private. So there's some private here around the dam that I could put my hives on, that I don't have to go and talk to the BLM and ask for a permit. Now I would have to go talk to the BLM because this is their property and ask them, where have you made applications? And of course, with them being a public entity, they have to disclose where those are at. So they'll tell you, well, we're not doing anything in these areas here. We're concentrating over here for the last 5 years. So once you make note of that and who you talk to, then you could submit that as an affidavit, and this could be a spot that you could put your hives. In this area, there is all kinds of different forage. There's early spring forage, there's choke cherries, maples, box elders, a lot of tree species in there, along with shrubs, sagebrush. Here in the picture, we've got some Utah sweet vetch, a couple different types of penstemons, sulfur paintbrush, and then along these roads, there's a lot of rabbit brush. So this could be something that you could actually produce organic honey on. So location, location, location again. So up here in the top left-hand corner, probably not going to be able to do this type of location because just too many private private properties that they have the right to do what they want on their properties, and therefore we wouldn't be able, unless you, I guess, had some type of skills that you could convince people into not spraying or not fertilizing your yards. But anyways, so top right hand picture, this is out actually by my house, where you have this shad scale and winter fat area. Does actually produce a lot of blooms. There's phlox, there's phacelia, there's glow mallows, penstemons, all kinds of different things. So throughout this area, there's even water sources. So there are places in Utah that this definitely can be done. Down here in Green River, this would be a melon field, again, dealing with farmers with large swaths of land like we have in Monticello and Green River. You may be able to talk to them on their applications, and if they haven't made any applications in years, it could be somewhere that you could look at. So again, with the forage zones, this is the most important thing. So I'm kind of harping on it and going over it a couple times. Where to find organic forage zones: public lands, BLM, Forest Service, state lands would be your best bet in Utah. Consider the wild harvest part, and not necessarily use land that you have to go talk to every owner and get that type of information, as far as making sure they're not applying to their yards. BLM, Forest Service, I know in this area have very limited. They have specific areas that they're attacking noxious weeds on, and there's areas that they haven't ever sprayed or may not ever spray. So again, make sure they're not treating those. And then it was discussed earlier, if you need to put those on, if your actual hives are going to be placed on federal lands or state lands, that you get the appropriate permits if it's needed. And like I said earlier, private lands do need to be certified organic for crops, which if they have not sprayed anything for 3 years or applied any synthetics for 3 years, that's something that's very easily done. All right. And also leased land or rented ground, you can also certify that as organic. So it would just be basically a consent form from the landowner saying that he hasn't applied anything, and you would keep that in your records. So some of the issues in forage zones, like this piece here, which is in eastern Utah also, is an area where they went through and bullhogged. Have never sprayed this, but if weeds come up, this could be something that they potentially spray, the county, okay, or weed or mosquito in these areas. You would have to talk to the county and ask them if they're spraying or intending to spray them. I know that in most places in Utah with the county weed control mosquitoes, if you go in and talk to them, they're very, very good not to spray down those roads that they know are under organic production. So it's just a matter of letting them know what you're doing. Now, if there's weeds along the road that they normally spray or would spray, you may have to do a little work yourself and maybe mow those in order to keep the county from coming in and spraying those. Also, a good idea would be to post no spray signs along the road, just to remind those county employees where to start and stop. And again, notify your federal land managers so that you know what areas are going to spray, so that they don't accidentally come into an area or you don't actually put stuff in bees in an area that's been sprayed. So anyways, all right. Now, split operations are operations that want to do organic and conventional at the same time. So they are allowed. So I can have an operation, same company, do organic bees and conventional bees at the same time. Now, what would be recommended is not to have those at the same location, because if I'm treating hives with prohibited substances and those hives are weakened for some reason, and I have robbing or bee drift, and that's found in your hive, then that hive would then have to be removed from organic and placed into conventional. So you could do it, but it wouldn't be feasible to do those at the same place. You would have to also list in your application and in your organic system plan your what preventative measures you're going to keep from commingling and contamination from happening. And like I mentioned, robbing and drift you must prevent strong organic hives from robbing weak non-organic hives. So again, putting those by each other probably wouldn't be the best bet. So in that 2010 recommendations, this is where we get into the management of the hives. So transitions. So apiaries under continuous organic management for 1 year prior to removal of bee products from the hive. So if I've got a regular beehive, I have to, and I want to make that organic, I have to transition that. So if I started tomorrow, February 21st, I would then have to start using organic techniques on that tomorrow, and 1 year from tomorrow, then I could pull organic products off. So there's a little bit of, don't panic, there's a little bit of ways around this, just a little bit. I'll talk to you in just a second. So hive foundation has to be new. Feed, so provide organic forage and organic feed supplements if needed. So this was part of the recommendations. And leave hives with adequate supplies of honey for the dormancy period. So you could not remove all the honey in the fall. You would need to leave ample honey in Utah to get them through the winter. And absolutely no antibiotics. That is something that's throughout organics. You cannot use antibiotics by any means. So we have the 1 year transition, okay? At the beginning of the transition, all foundation wax must be replaced and all brood comb must be new. So on February 1st, I would have to pull the foundation and brood comb and start new as of February 21st in order to do that. And also the boxes should be cleaned to remove any residue. So I wouldn't want to have any wax or anything type of residue. So I'd take those boxes off and clean them as good as possible. I know it's hard to clean wood, but trying to scrape those off and a little bit of soap and water to try and get off as much as possible. So this is where you may be able to jump into organics a little quicker. So there's no issues with splits coming from an organic source. So if I buy in organic splits, those guys can go right into producing organic. Now, if I purchase packages bees, they're fine also with certain conditions. So if I buy conventional bees from someone, I can make those into organic. And how I do that is I make sure that it doesn't come with any foundation, any brood, okay, that basically they'll go from a package straight into a new box with nothing else but the bees. Now, I've got to manage those organically for 60 days prior to producing organic. So this is where I talked about you can maybe get around things. So if I want to start an organic apiary, maybe my best bet would be when I make my splits, that I take those and I split those into organic, like I've mentioned here, that you've got that you're not putting any of the brood or foundation or anything from your other hives. You're going straight into just brand new, well, not brand new, but brand new or cleaned organic hives. So the other thing is no supers on the hives for 60 days. That's because you do have bees in there that have not been managed for under organic, and so within 60 days you've had that turnover, and now everything that's in there would then be have been managed under organic. So no supers for 60 days, and then you can go ahead and put them on. Hive construction should be made out of natural materials. So this is again from the standards board, so we have to go by it. So wood or metal. So those would be your options. You'd have to have natural. No lumber treated with prohibited materials for hive construction. So no treated lumber for hives. No lead-based paints. Plastic foundation can be used, but it has to be dipped in organic wax. So you'd have to buy some organic wax, dip those, and then you could go ahead and use them. So some of the must-nots of organic beekeeping. So you can't use prohibited material for smoke or fuel. So I can go out off my tree, or here in Carbon County, when I was beekeeping, I like to use juniper bark. So I could go down the road from my house a couple miles, grab some dead juniper bark, and that's what I use for my smoking material. I could not use newspaper because newspaper has chemical dye on it, print. So magazines, newspapers, stuff like that, I could not use as my smoking fuel. I can't use synthetic bees repellents either when I'm harvesting products, and I can't destroy my colonies after honey flow, which I don't know that that's, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know that that's too much of a problem anymore. The other thing is I can't rotate between organic and non-organic management. So I can't one year have them organic, pull them out, the next year they're not organic, then throw them back into organic. If they're inorganic, they stay organic until they can't be, and then they're removed and they can't come back in. So no jumping in and out to treat hives. Some of the must not continued. So you can't produce organic by neglect. So I can't just say I'm going to be organic because I'm not doing anything to the hives. That doesn't work. So I can't just accept parasites, pests, and disease without efforts to restore the health of the colony. So I'll give you an example. In livestock production with cows, if a cow gets sick and needs antibiotics, that cow is then given antibiotics and pulled from organic production and no longer can go back. So if your hive does need to have antibiotics for American or European foul brood, then you would treat those, because if you don't treat them, you're going to spread disease, and you're also, have a chance of it dying. So you have to treat those, but then you would have to pull those out and move those to your conventional fields away from your organics. So, and you'd have to move those before you actually treat it. Okay, so I just went over that. So feed must be provided from an organic agricultural feed ration. So a feed ration would be, what is the bee feeding on every single day to derive its fiber, protein, and fat, we'll say, from. So those main components have to be an organic source. So is it a tree? Is it is it an organic raspberry patch? Or is it a facility that produces, a strawberry, like these barrels on the left-hand side is a strawberry facility, and they use that to produce like a strawberry gelatin that has all kinds of different non-organic ingredients. And so those non-organic ingredients sometimes are left in the barrels. And when I was here on the site, I actually saw bees going in and out. This was in Washington, going in and out for that material. So that right there would not be an organic source. And so you would have to really watch for those areas. So you can supplement and feed bees. And of course you can feed organic honey. So if you could feed back your organic honey if you needed to, or you could purchase organic honey. You can use organic sugar syrups up to 15 days prior to installing your supers. So 15 days before you install your supers, the feeding has to stop, has to be removed from the hive. So protein is allowed if it's an organic source. So if you're making your own protein patties, then you would have to make that from organic ingredients. If you're buying it in, it would have to be a certified organic product. So there are some synthetic substances allowed in beekeeping, and you can find those in 205, 603 of the rule, and some of those we'll get to here in just a second. So no antibiotics allowed in any form, so keep hammering on that. Natural products as a supplement can't be a main part of their diet. So again, this goes into if I'm going to use a vitamin package, or that's a natural source, or if I'm using, would be another example, if I'm using some type of oils, essential oils that I'm using in the hives, it can't be a main part of their diet if it's not organic. So here they are, essential oils. Garlic, I don't know if garlic's used anymore. I know it was a while ago. Those could be used not in organic form as a supplement, but they couldn't be a main part of the ration. You can use vitamin packages, and you can use minerals, because you can't, not all those are available in organic forms. Minerals in general are not considered organic because it's a mined substance. So on the national list, this is where I want to go to find out if something is approved or not, is 205, 603, and it's specific to livestock. And some of the products that are on there that would be used in honey production, formic acid is on there, thymol, carbon dioxide, oxalic acid, and then vitamins and minerals. So those would be your treatments right now that are available in organic form for bees. So some of the other treatments you wouldn't be able to use. So, but it sounds like after listening to this, the oxalic acid, formic acid is still, thymol is still used for Varroa, and so you wouldn't be completely helpless with that. There are prohibited non-synthetic substances, so natural substances. An example would be tobacco, strychnine. Those are a couple of different ones that are natural forming substances that are not allowed in production of livestock or bees. So once I've got the bees on their organic ground and their organic feed and in their organic hives, and I'm ready to extract that, there's a few more things that have to be looked at. So extraction and packaging is part of the organic process, and therefore it is also regulated, but it's really not too bad. It's controlled in sections 205, 300 through 311. That's the labeling part of it. And it deals a lot with cleaners, sanitizers, and pest controls. So this would be something that if I'm cleaning out my harvesting equipment, I may have to go from quaternary ammonia to using an alcohol or hydrogen peroxide as my sanitizer before I start my harvest. So quaternary ammonia is not allowed. So therefore, you may have to adjust a little bit with what your cleaners and your sanitizers are. Most cleaners can be used as long as they're rinsed, and then things are sanitized after that. Pest control is sometimes an issue in a facility. I can't spray my harvesting and packaging facility with just anything I want. I have to look at using mechanical and cultural techniques first. Then if those don't work, through working with me, the certifier, we can go through a plan of using natural botanicals, and if those don't work, we can progress to synthetics with some different things that precautions we'd have to take. We'd have to look at commingling and contamination. So once I got done harvesting my conventional honey, I would then have to stop. I would have to do a complete clean and then start my organic honey. And the reason why is because I can't commingle that conventional with organic. It would then make my organic conventional honey. That's why most processors will run the organic product first for the day. And then, so if they're running, we'll say we do certify a lot of coconut oil. So if they're running organic coconut oil and conventional coconut oil, they'll run the organic first, and then they can just go right into their conventional production. So if you were going to do both on the same day, I would recommend doing your organic first before you do your conventional. Another thing you'd have to look at if you're doing whipped and flavored honey, any of those ingredients you put in, those would have to be organic also. Those would have to be approved through us before you applied them to the actual product. And then labeling. The use of the term organic is actually regulated by USDA, and it's something they patented for agricultural products. In the pictures there I've given you, actually we're in the same store. The top picture with the green sill with the brown edge is actually what is allowed, and so that's something that has to be approved prior to use. The bottom picture with the all green is actually, that's an illegal use of the USDA sill. So that's why I included in here, is that there's actually certain forms that it has to be in, and you have to have those approved before you start your labeling. The other thing that I've seen a little bit is the use of term organic in the company name. So I'll use my name. If my bee company is Dave Organic Honey, and I'm not producing organic honey, therefore that's a violation of the rule, and I'm open to prosecution for that. So if you have the term organic in your name, you probably want to remove it, and you can't put it in your name unless you actually have organic products. And now the best part, record keeping. What you would have to do with record keeping is, of course, identify your hives with some type of identification. There's no standard way of doing it. However you want to do it, as long as you can interpret that to me, then that is fine. You need to identify where your water sources are, describe what the desirable species are in the forage zone, so we know if it's something that's about viable zone or not. You need to provide maps of the forage zone. You may have to provide affidavits, letters from governments, government agencies, or landowners. All inputs have to be pre-approved by the certifier. So those would be records you would keep, and you would have to keep all of your sales and production records so that we can actually produce tracebacks and mass balances off of those. Okay, so representing conventional as organic. So there's been a huge law enforcement in the last 3 years. So USDA has gotten tons of money and the last 3 years for this, and I've seen a huge enforcement from when I started in the organic program back in 2010. So there is a civil penalty up to $10,000 per incidence that you use the term organic and you only sell or label organic products. So last year, over the last 3 years, it's been in the hundreds of millions of dollars that USDA has collected from this. It's mostly from 1 or 2 people that are selling hundreds of millions of dollars of fake products that they get a lot of that money back, but it's not something that you actually want to try to get by, because the enforcement, I went from having 0 come across my desk as far as investigations, USDA asking for my help on, to having now multiple ones per week come across my desk. So this is not something that you wanna try to attempt. All right, so probably what you've been waiting for the whole time, so I put it on the end of the presentation so that I wouldn't chase anybody off. The cost of certification. So we are actually one of the cheapest certification agencies out there. We're by far the cheapest for Utah. And that's because I don't have to have full-time inspectors that only do organic. So my full-time inspectors are our staff that also does seed, feed, fertilizer, and all that kind of stuff. So we run the program we do not use taxpayer money for this. This is a self-funded program, but thank goodness we don't have to employ those people year-round. So they work in other divisions. So what the fee is a $300 annual application fee. That's every year. Once you get into the program, it's due every February 1st. Along with that, the other fees that could be incurred is an inspection fee. You do have to have an inspection of your hives and your property annually. This ranges somewhere between $400 and $800. We have seen it go up to $1,600, $1,800 on very large amounts of land that the people weren't actually very prepared to show us around. So it wasn't our fault, it was theirs for not being prepared. And then the last fee is a gross sales fee. So it starts at $100 for $5,000. So if you're doing under $5,000, there's no additional gross sales fee. It maxes out at $5,000 for anything over $500,000. So So it's an incremental scale. It's between 0.5% and 1%. And the reason why we do this is because the bigger the operations need more of our attention. And so this is a good way that we've found that larger operations that pay their fair share of our attention, where smaller operations that may not really hear from us a whole lot aren't overly burdened with it. So, and this is only on organic sales. So if you're doing $5,000 a year in organic, you would pay us $100, even if you're doing another $1 million in conventional. So it's only based off of organic. So those are the fees for it. So really, you max out somewhere around $6,000, but that would put you doing over $500,000 at that. So what do you get for organic certification? So you have more outlets. So you can always sell organic honey as conventional, but you can't go the other way. So now with organic, I've got another avenue to sell my honey that you didn't before. So pricing on average. So I got this from the monthly USDA honey report. So usually on average, it looked like 30 to 50% more money for organic than you are for conventional. And maybe that's worth it for you, and maybe you don't want to touch it because it's not. There are a few times that I've seen the report over the last year that it was in the 100 to 200% more, but that was very far and few between. Majority of the time, it was between 30 and 50% more. Less competition in the organic. That is one thing that I have seen working here is I've had a lot of people inquiry about doing honey, organic honey products, straws, whipped honeys, different things like that. Once they get talking to me, and they end up usually calling me back and say, we can't find a source. So we do have honey that's coming out of Canada, but there's not enough to fill the demand. I also have a lot of companies that do other products such as baby foods or workout supplements to protein bars that have really wanted to use honey in their products and have products sitting there waiting for them to start producing once they can find a source of organic honey. One thing about organics, it's the fastest growing segment in the grocery stores by about 40%. I listened to a gentleman from Associated and Smith's talk about how someone buying organics is typically a bag of food that they buy is around $36 versus $22 for someone conventional. So margins for grocery stores are much better with organic, and that's why I think you're seeing more and more organic coming into the stores. I know we've exploded over the last couple of years with people producing organic products, and the market's been there. And this is like I've mentioned already, that more and more products are looking for organic honey. One of the things is premium at local markets. So 30% more might be what you get on the wholesale market, but at local farmers markets or local markets, this is where you can really make the 100 to 200% more than what you can get for just regular conventional honey. Currently, there are no organic beekeepers in Utah at this time. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of need for processed foods. Like I said, I think there's probably at least 20 or 30 that I know of that are sitting waiting for a source on organic honey. All right, and with that, that is all I've got.
All right, Dave, there's a couple of questions down in the Q&A box. Can you see those?
Yep. So what type of Varroa treatments are okay for organic honey? So we kind of went over those with the formic and oxalic acid. Let's see. And then it says, what about foul brood treatments? So foul brood treatments, you would have to, if you are going to do foul brood, again, remember I went over there, you'd have to remove all your foundation, all your forms, and put in new in order to do that. So realistically, if you clean that hive out, that hive box out, and put new everything in, you could literally dump those bees in, and in 60 days. Well, I might have to get back to you on that, if that's a year or if that would be 60 days. I'm guessing if it's a treatment with antibiotics, we'd have to wait a year. Let's see. So what is the motivation for most beekeepers for attempting to go organics? That would be something that was discussed a little bit with what are the benefits. It's just there's not a lot out there, and there's definitely a demand for it.
So Dave, as we've kicked around the things that you talked about here, one of the questions that we had was, we could go into Costco and find a whole rack full of organic honey. What's your confidence level there, or where does that come from?
Well, it will have to be certified. Most likely it's not from the US. So most likely it's probably from South America, or it's from Canada. If it is from Canada, my confidence level is pretty high. If it's from South America and it's through the EU standard, I don't know that my confidence is real high on that, but that is something that has been discussed among the certifiers, that honey is tested quite frequently for pesticides and synthetics. So most likely it is getting tested somewhere. Now, some certifiers test more than others. And that's why I think the premium would be there for local organic honey.
Thank you. There's 3 more questions popped up down there. If you could-
So you can't fume boards to clear supers. Can you use a gas or electric bee blower? So I need a little help on that, what that is. So you're talking like a propane?
Yeah, I think what they're saying is you can't use a chemical driver to push the bees out of the honey supers. They're looking at a gas-powered or electric-powered blower to physically blow them out, I think.
Oh, yeah, you could use that. That wouldn't be any problems. Yeah, there wouldn't be any problems using gas or electric to blow those out. So are these rules organic? Rules are nationwide. So these are USDA. There's only, in the US, there's only USDA certified organics. And what happens was USDA didn't have enough manpower to do this. And so they have literally farmed it out. So how it works is USDA oversees me, and then I oversee all the operations. So I get audited almost annually from USDA to make sure I'm doing everything right. But with my stamp of approval, you're able to use the USDA SIL, the USDA certification. So there is no such thing as Utah certified organic or California certified organic or anything else. It's USDA certified organics. It's national standard. Why isn't HopGuard listed as a Varroa treatment? So HopGuard is the generic name. I'm not sure what's in HopGuard. So what would happen with something like this is if you came across something like HopGuard and you wanted to use it in your hives, you would submit it to us. We would then dig into what it is, and we would probably go to the manufacturer of HopGuard and say, can you give us a spec sheet, which then they would tell us what everything is in HopGuard, and then we would make the decision based off of its components, if it's allowed or not allowed.
Sure. Hey, Dave, there's a lot of people who use the cottage industry laws to produce honey and sell it on Facebook or these different sites on Facebook, like the Davis County Classifieds or something. Earlier this year or last year, somebody was advertising a certified organic honey. And so I questioned that, and the answer I got was that it was certified, that her label was approved by the FDA.
Nope.
I didn't think so.
Nope, FDA doesn't do certified organics. And there's certain components of a label that USDA does not supersede FDA, and FDA does not supersede USDA. So as far as making sure the weight of the container, the components of the container, the ingredients, So USDA can't say how to do it. You have to do it FDA's way. Just like FDA can't say, well, organics have to be this or that. That's USDA's way. So USDA does have a website, and if you typed into your Google search USDA organic enforcement, you would then get a link there that you could report someone like that, and then USDA would then investigate it. Or they would contact me to investigate.
Is there a finder's fee if we narc somebody out?
Not that I know of. So
All right.
it's just about keeping the integrity of the name. But there's actually a proposed rule right now that's out for the comment period just closed to try and strengthen. It's actually called strengthening and enforcing. So USDA is even going more and more on trying to protect the brand. So.
Well, I hope so, because I mean, the reports that we receive is 80% of the honey that you find in big box stores is adulterated honey, and certainly when they can sell it for $2 a pound versus what we have to sell it for in order to make a profit, is hurting us as beef honey producers.
Yeah. Yep. So another question: bee forage more than 1.10. Why so little? 1.8. Don't ask me why. That's the magic number that Europe came up with, Canada came up with, and USDA came up with. So I had seen some things kicking around in earlier publications about 2 miles, but for some reason 1.8. And maybe that's because Europeans did it with 3 kilometers, a nice round number, which translates into 1.8 miles. So, I don't know what that product is. Fisher's Bee Quick for bee removal. Again, that would be something you'd submit to me, and we would have to look at it to see what components are in it. So. And let me answer this real quick. That was from Randy's about the experimental use, or we have emergency temporary use. So that would be out of our division, plant industry division, our pesticide division, and that's Henry Nahaluski. So you could go ahead and just call the main Salt Lake office and ask for Henry Nahaluski, and he would be able to help you on this. He is over pesticides. He takes those applications, goes through those applications, works with EPA and with an advisory board there in Salt Lake to certify those. I don't know that it's really painful to do it. It just takes a while.
Well, Dave, I think you worked through all the questions. We really appreciate your expertise and your time. Thanks for being here.
Yep, no problem. And anybody's welcome to contact me at my office here in Price. If you have any more questions, if you want a packet, I can send out organic packets that have a little more information to them, a little more detailed information, and also kind of you can see what you're getting into as far as applications and all that kind of stuff. So
wonderful, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So we're getting ready to wrap up the end of our convention. Just real quick, anybody's got any questions that hasn't been answered, and you got one that you want to throw out to us, we're here as a board. We will review those questions and give you an answer with our opinions. I do want to say that we do have a break scheduled to come up here. I think we're going to just continue working through, maybe goes out here a little bit earlier. And we'll be watching for those questions to come in. But what we want to do is just move on into our business meeting. One part of that is going to be our financial summary from Doug Hawks. So I want to turn just a few minutes over to him.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for waiting for this important part of this convention. Last year, we had a a successful year with our conference last year. We had a net income of $4,191. That was after we paid the expenses from the conference. We did have a large contribution that helped us get to that point. That was nice last year. This year, so far, just for this year to date, for the conference that we've received the membership fees and the conference fees, we're right now before expenses at $4,469. So the association is in good hands financially. We're able to provide these services for the members, and we appreciate all of your support and help in those regards.
I nominate that we accept the financial report as it has been given.
Second. Thank you. We've received nomination and second to approve this financial report. I'm not sure how people vote.
All in favor?
All in favor, say aye. Thank you very much.
Any opposed?
Any opposed for the confirmation portion?
Okay, thank you, Doug, for that. And thanks for, all you do and keeping our bills paid.
We dropped down by 10.
We've had an interesting year this year doing this virtually. We've been able to bring in a lot of great speakers this year because we didn't have to worry about travel expenses and hotel stays. Making sure they're getting food and transportation to and from the airport. So it's been a great year, and it's worked out really well, probably better than we expected, at least better than I expected. One item of business I want to bring up is a nomination and voting for new board members and new presidents. Because of our situation with COVID-19, we met together as the board. We discussed how we could do this, and it was determined that we couldn't make these votings happen this year. So in retrospect, the decision is that all board members and the incoming past president and myself, president, will serve for one more year. We hope that by next year at this time that we can meet together, we can find a way to make sure we can get some voting and get new board members on to help our organization continue to run as it has in the past. Kind of a side note with our convention also, we had a lot of good material brought forth. I just want to throw out my 2 cents here for a second, that take what you've learned here and apply it. See if it works, if it doesn't work. It might not work for you, and it might work awesome for you. But when we meet again, let us know what worked well for you, what you learned from this convention. Also, stay in tune to our website, uba.wildapicot. We post any update information on there. For all those who have been viewing this and you want to go back and review some of these presenters' presentations, there will be an email link sent out to you to view those. And you can watch those for free for the next 2 weeks. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
We talked about watching your emails. We talked about having some focus groups with the different groups of producers. We've got backyard beekeepers, sideliners, and commercial subgroups within our organization. We're going to try to organize some focus groups within each of those, just to get some feedback specific to their needs and experiences. So if you want to be part of those focus groups and have your opinions kind of discussed in a large focus group, then just watch for those emails. We'll get those organized as quickly as we can.
Okay. And another thing is we're going to have a link on our association website so everybody can rate how our conference went. We like to hear that feedback so we know how we can plan for next year's convention. Take time to fill out that survey. If you had troubles doing that, feel free to contact any of us board members, bring your concerns up, and we will address them as a board.
One other thing we talked about was that just to pay attention to the website and your emails, we may try and bring another speaker in throughout the year or speakers in throughout the year and just do a 1 to 2 hour little meeting throughout the year. So pay attention to the webpage and to your emails. We'll let you know if and when we get somebody to speak to us.
And if you have somebody that you would like to hear from, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will do our best to see if we can accommodate that. There are a lot of experts out there, a lot of researchers who only get to discuss their findings in their little research groups, and they love getting information out to the beekeepers in general, so we can benefit from their research and information. So please reach out to us and let us know who you would like to hear from.
Thank you. Just one last thing is thanks to all these board members. They put a lot of time in to help make this convention possible. The Utah Law and Justice Center that we're at, thank them for letting us come in here even on a Saturday. They've been real accommodating to us. But there's been a lot of effort put in by everybody to make this happen, and thank you for viewing. You guys are the ones that make this successful, so thank you.